What up, guys? It's Josiah here, and today we're doing Walk to Moon Chapter 3. Chapter is called Bravery, and let's begin. Because I first saw Phoebe on the day my father and I moved to Euclid, I began my story of Phoebe with the visit to the red-headed Margaret Caviar's, where I also met Miss Partridge, her elderly mother. Margaret nearly fell over herself to be nice to me. "What lovely hair," she said, "and aren't you sweet?" I was not sweet that day. I was being particularly ordinary. I wouldn't sit down and I wouldn't look at Margaret. As we were leaving, I overheard Margaret whisper to my father, "John, have you told her yet how we met?" My father looked exceedingly uncomfortable. "No," he said. "I tried, but she doesn't want to know." Now that was the truth, absolutely. Who cares, I thought. Who cares how he met Margaret? I was standing in the porch and I saw Phoebe's face again at the window next door. At the time, all I could think of was getting to our new house, which I hoped would be miles and miles away, out on the green countryside. When we last left Miss Caviar's and Miss Partridge, we drove for approximately 3 minutes. 2 blocks from Margaret Caviar's was the place where my father and I were going to live. If someone had blindfolded me and spun me around a few times and driven me around for an hour, and then removed my blindfold, I would have thought that I was still in front of Margaret's house. Tiny square trees, little birdhouses in a row, and one of the birdhouses was ours. No swimming hole, no barn, no cows, no chickens, no pigs. Instead, a little white house with a miniature patch of green grass in front of it. It was enough to keep a cow alive for 5 minutes. "Let's take a tour," my father said, rather too heartily. We walked through the tiny living room into the miniature kitchen and upstairs onto my father's pint-sized bedroom, on my pocket-sized bedroom, and into the wee bathroom. I looked out the upstairs window, down into the backyard. Half of the tiny yard was a cement patio, and the other half was another patch of grass, which our imaginary cow would devour in 2 bites. There was a tall wooden fence around it, and to the left and right were the identical fence plots. We sat on the front steps and waited by the moving van. When it arrived, we watched the men cram our Bybank's furniture into the birdhouse. After they finished, my dad inched into the living room, crawling over sofas and chairs and tables and boxes. My father said. It looks like if we tried to squeeze all the animals into a chicken coop." 3 days later, I started school, and that's when I saw Phoebe again. She was in my class. The students in my new school spoke in quick, sharp bursts and dressed in stiff new clothes. The girls all wore their hair in exactly the same way, in a shoulder-length bob, that's what they called it, with a long fringe, which they repeatedly shook out of their eyes. We once had a horse who did that. Everybody kept touching my hair. "Don't you ever cut it?" they said. "Can you sit on it? How do you wash it? Is it naturally black like that? Do you use conditioner?" I couldn't tell if they liked my hair or thought I looked like a wang-doodle. They all seemed to talk quite a lot, and everyone seemed to have braces on their teeth. One girl, Mary Lou Finney, said the most peculiar things. Like out of the blue, she would say, "I'm a potent," or "beef brain." I couldn't make any sense of it. There were Japanese twins, a brother and a sister, who didn't speak at all except to say "yes, yes," and "yes, yes." There were Megan and Christy, who jumped up and down like parched peas, moody Beth Ann, and pink-cheeked Alex. There was Ben, who drew cartoons all day long, and a most peculiar teacher named Miss Berkaway. And then there was Phoebe Winterbottom. Ben called her Freebie Ice Bottom, and drew a picture of a bumblebee with ice cube on its bottom. Phoebe tore it up. Phoebe was a quiet girl. She stayed mostly by herself and seemed quite shy. She had the most pleasant face and huge, enormous sky-blue eyes. Around the pleasant round face, her hair curled in short ringtails, as yellow as a crow's foot. During the first week, when my father and I were at Margaret's, we ate dinner there 3 times a week. I saw Phoebe's face twice more at the window in the house next door. Once I waved to Phoebe, but she didn't seem to notice, and at school she never mentioned that she had seen me. Then one day at lunch, she slid into the seat next to me and said, "Sal, you're ever so courageous. You're ever so brave." To tell you the truth, I was surprised. You could have knocked me over with a chicken feather. "Me? I'm not brave," I said. You are brave." I was not. Salamanca Tree Hill, was afraid of lots of things. Lots and lots of things. For example, I was terrified of car accidents, death, cancer, brain tumors, nuclear war, pregnant women, loud noises, strict teachers, elevators, and scads of other things, but I was not afraid of spiders, snakes, and wasps. Phoebe and nearly everyone else in my class did not have much fondness for these creatures. On the first day of class, when the dignified black spider was investigating my desk, I cupped my hands around it and carried it to the open window, and set it outside on the ledge. Mary Lou Finney said, Alpha and Omega. Mary Lou Finney said, Alpha and Omega, will you look at that? Beth Ann was as white as milk. All around the room, people were acting as if I had single-handedly taken on a fire-breathing dragon. During the next week, if an innocent spider was crawling towards someone's desk, they would yell, Sal, get it! When a wasp flew in the window for a peek around the room, they said, Sal, it's Wasp, get it! And once a tiny green garden snake slithered along the baseboard, and everyone screamed, Sal, a snake! Oh, Sal, get it! As I was trying my best to assist these various creatures in finding their way out of the classroom and back into the wide-open spaces, people would say, Sal, kill it, kill it! I wondered how they would like it if someone smushed them just because they happened to stray into someone else's room. I suppose that just because I was not afraid of these creatures, people thought I was brave. I suppose they didn't know how I felt about cars, cancer, nuclear war, and all those other things. What I have since realized is that if people expect you to be brave, sometimes you pretend that you are, even when you are frightened down to your very bones. But this was later, during the whole thing with Phoebe's lunatic, I realized this. At this point in my story, Graham interrupted to say, Why Salamanca? Of course you're brave. All the Hiddles are brave. It's a family trait. Look at your daddy, your mama. My mama is not a real Hiddle, I said. She practically is, Graham said. You can't be married to a Hiddle that long and not become a Hiddle. That is not what my mother used to say. She would tell my father, You Hiddles are a mystery to me. I'll never be a true Hiddle. She did not say this proudly. She said it as if they were triumphantly sorry about it, as if it was some sort of failing in her, some sort of loss. My mother's parents were my other set of grandparents, are Pick folks, and they are unlike my grandparents, Hiddle. As a donkey is unlike a pickle. Grandmother and grandfather Pickford stand straight up as if they were sturdy steel poles run down their backs. They wear starched iron clothing, and when they are shocked or surprised, which is often, they say, Really? Is that so? And their eyes open widely and their mouth turned down at the corners. Once I asked my mother why grandmother and grandfather Pickford never laughed. My mom said, They're just being so busy being respectful. It takes a lot of concentration to be that respectful. And then mother laughed and laughed in a friendly, gentle way, and her own spine was not made of steel. You could tell because she bent it half, laughing and laughing. My mother said that grandmother Pickford's one single act of defiance in her life as a Pickford was naming my mother. Grandmother Pickford, whose own name is Greyfeather, named my mother Sharon Hasten. Its Indian name, meaning tree sweet juice, or in other words, maple sugar. Only grandmother Pickford ever called my mother by her Indian name, though everyone else called my mother Sugar. Most of the time, my mother seemed nothing like her parents at all, and it was hard for me to imagine that she'd come from them. Only occasionally, very, very rarely, in small, unexpected moments, the corners of my mother's mouth would turn down and she'd say, Really? Is that so? And she sounded exactly like a Pickford. Hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. If you guys did, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!